Hello, YouTube. Hi, everybody. It's the Stratosphere Studio. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and it is the 15th of January, 2024 already. It's just crazy, just nuts. Looking here, good to see everybody. Hello, and got some good news. I've decided to rename this Frank Luke story. I was going to call it The Streak, but now I'm going to call it The Never-Ending Story, Part Biplane Boogaloo. I think that's really catching. Thank you, Eric. So here's a problem that I've never had to deal with before in writing a script, ever, a movie script anyway. So I'm dealing with it's still going on. It's still going on. I'm doing a script for Daily Wire. It doesn't mean it's going to be produced about the life of Frank Luke, who was America's leading ace in World War I until he was killed. He shot down 18 planes in 17 days or something. And because it's a historical story, I've got a problem that I haven't had to deal with before. Hey, hello, Chris, everybody. So here's the problem. If I was writing a completely fictional piece and I didn't have to worry about making this kind of a biography, then I would just simply amend where I was running long or where it was slowing down or whatever. I would just write my way out of that. I'd just think of some way to move the plot along or to get, just get the thing moving. However, in this case, I've got a bunch of historical points where I know Frank Luke did this. I'm not going to talk about this very long. I'll get right into questions tonight because I've been talking about it forever and it just will not end. Basically, I've got all these little points where I know where he was and what he did from the time he was a baby, actually, until the instant he died and years after. So these little points are on a pegboard, and I'm writing a spline that has to go through all of these things. And the problem is that there are too many pegs on the board, but I don't know which pegs to pull, and I won't know until I get the thing finished, which means all the pegs. So right now, I think we're at 200 pages, 205. That's twice the length it needs to be. And it's just the never-ending story. The more it just keeps going. I find myself, well, first of all, obviously the reason I wanted to do this in the first place is because I find it just so interesting. But, I did save myself a lot of time quite a while ago by basically laying out the calendar dates, what happened on what dates, like historical events, what did I have to cover, and then how do I get from, like, if nothing happens between August 20th and August 27th, let's say 1918, how do I get between those two and so on. Normally, as I said, I could just write a bridge or just play with it, but for me, if there's an interesting historical point, I've got to put a spline through it, which means I have to write that scene. So it really is twice the length it needs to be, and it really is 2 movies. I don't think they're going to go for that. I'm not sure they're going to go for 1 movie, but in any event, it is. It's like that great effect shot that you can do when you dolly forward but zoom out and the walls just go, like that. It's just like the harder you run, the further away it gets. I am actually knocking down pages and scenes, I mean, I'm not going backwards. But what I find is things that look to me coming up like it's going to be just just a paragraph or 2, end up writing 3 pages about because I just like the topic so much. So, that's that. And I can't do anything else until I get this done. I'm way behind on delivering this thing, so I'm overdue on, things to come and the story mechanics, all that stuff. So it's just been a lot of work, and I'd say I'd be done for it by next Monday, but I don't know that I will. I just keep writing, and I'm here every day for never less than 7 or 8 hours, and often for 13, just pumping away at this thing. It's just insane. Yeah, miniseries would be awesome. 4-part miniseries would be great. Anyway, so one of the screenwriting guys, on a guide to screenwriting, as well played there, Dave. One of these guys who were, I don't know if it was in a book or it was just listening to him talk about it. He's a screenwriter, though, an experienced screenwriter. And he said the first draft is basically don't try to build anything there. It's just clearing the land. And I really like the sound of that, because I'm clearing, I've got a little 40-acre patch, and I'm clearing the county, and that's really what I'm doing. Everything that I've got, I'm putting down, and I don't know what to cut until I see it all. But it's, it is actually going forward. It's just much, 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 much more than I expected. I did the same thing with America's Forgotten Heroes, which is the Frank Luke story was the second one in that set. I think they wanted 8,000 or 9,000 words, and my first draft of John Paul Jones, I want to say, was 36,000. And when you've got historical drama, you dive deep into this little moment. There's this raid in case of John Paul Jones, just to get off of Frank Luke for a change. In the case of John Paul Jones, there's this one raid on this British town, and and it's just like he raids the British town, and it's like no, the guy goes up to the tower and he spikes the guns, and then he goes down here, and then he walks out to the ship, and he throws a piece of burning tar into this merchant ship, and then he does this, and his crew has left him, and he's standing on the pier, and he's got a cutlass in one hand and a pistol in another, and here's all the villagers, and they're all British subjects, and they know it's John Paul Jones the pirate, and the scourge of the Royal Navy, and I don't know how to not describe that or not do it, and so it all just comes to it's interesting. So I'm going to write it anyway. Once I've got it down, it's much easier after that. So that's that. Okay, so like I said, let's just go to questions. Why don't we? Because I didn't get them any last week. Well, there was one other little thing. What was it? We went to see Natasha and I went out to Lompoc to see the SpaceX night launch from Vandenberg. It was a 2.5-hour drive, and they scrubbed the mission about 6 minutes before liftoff. So we had ourselves a fine little drive, and came back. We were going to go the next night, but we didn't, and glad we didn't because it got scrubbed again. And then finally on, I think it was a Sunday night, Saturday night, Sunday morning at 1 a.m., I think, we didn't want to make the trip just yet, but we did step outside, and sure enough, from Los Angeles, it's like this amazingly beautiful orange trail, and even without the lighting being perfect, once the second stage separates, you just see this incredible fan of gas and dust, and now I really honestly did the math on this 3 times. So my studio, and I'm not doing this intentionally, it's just the way that Google Earth defaulted, so don't panic. But I drew a beeline from where we were standing in the parking lot to the launch pad, the actual pad at Vandenberg, and it was 199.67 kilometers. So in real numbers, that's 130, 140 miles, something like that. And then I looked at where we parked. It was one of the places that was recommended if you want to go to Vandenberg launches for whatever. And I looked at where we parked, and then I just used that same measuring tool in Google Earth. And honest to God, we were about 2.5 miles from the launch site. And I don't believe I've ever been closer than, I don't know what the causeway is at Cape Kennedy, but it feels like it's 17 miles, 12 miles. It's a long way. I remember the Saturn V was real tiny. 2.5 miles away from this thing. That's going to be cool. So as we were coming back and the launch was scrubbed, I was feeling kind of disappointed. And then I thought, well, we'll just go to the next one. There might be another one this year. Probably be another one this year. Several from Vandenberg anyway. We'll see if maybe there'll be a night mission. So I go look at the launch schedule for Vandenberg, and there are 7 SpaceX missions, Falcon 9 launches from Vandenberg in March. So, I don't know if anybody here has ever been closer than 2.5 miles to a launch, but to me, I find that almost inconceivable. It should be a sight to see. So we'll go back to the next night launch and then we'll see. But that's how you get there, man. That's how you get there. Operational tempo, and that works great. So wants to do 140 launches in 2024. That's what it felt like, when we were standing there watching this thing climbing up into the sky. It was very beautiful. I saw many space shuttle launches from Gainesville, Paynes Prairie, technically just outside, and the shuttle, the SRBs put out just a lot of light. I mean, it's just really, really, really bright. So just this white cloud when the shuttle goes up. But this thing had this golden orange plume behind it. You could almost see like particles in it. It was just beautiful to see. And that's at 130 miles, 140 miles. So I'll let you know when we get to try it again. So Natasha has a particular issue with this because she's a photographer and I'm not, thankfully. But several times when we're out there, Natasha will start shooting stuff on her iPhone, and I have to almost bark, like, honey, don't watch the whole thing on the screen. Just hold the camera like this and look with your eyes. David Booty says he found a great beach just south of the Cape to watch launches. So yeah. Anyway, the thing that we're talking about, the operational tempo. Watching this thing go was kind of like watching, it was almost like waiting for the Airbus A380 or something. It's like, oh, there it is. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Sure enough. Yeah. Well, that's another airplane landing. So now what do we do? It felt routine, and that's great news. So, man, I am so anxious to get back into the sci-fi world and the Mace Mattingly and all this other. You have no idea. It's a never-ending story. But in any event, end up with a good script. I'm sure of that, because it was a really almost incredible true story. So there it is. One last thing about the Frank Luke thing, and this is just, again, because this show's about films, filmmaking, storytelling, all the rest of it. One of the things about Luke is that everybody described him as very talkative and very high-strung. And that's hard to write, because the guy's just blabbing all the time. I've done enough of it. I put enough of it in there to give you the sense that when he's on a roll, he loses lock and the Sidewinder heads for the sun. But there are many, many times when it just needs to be quiet, and I'm kind of wrestling with that. So I'm sure when I do the rewrites, I'll be able to juice it up a little bit. It's one of the many, 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 many interesting opposites about this story. This guy who's such a killer and such an isolated guy, he's just so effective, and he's out there riding his horse out into Fort Apache with his friend. He's 15 years old, and it's a 100-mile ride on horses for these two guys. So he's just like, on one hand, he's like this super independent, rugged kind of guy, and you kind of want to write him almost like Clint Eastwood. And then you read all this stuff about how high-strung he is and how he's doing all the boasting and stuff. So I could put the boasting in there. But having him just have a chatty response to everything just doesn't really feel right. So that's a dial I can turn in the second draft. We'll turn up the chattiness. We'll take the suck and we'll turn the suck way down. We'll take all the gas out of these descriptions, because I write scene descriptions like a novelist, not like a screenwriter. As I've said before, what I would do, what I did, in fact, was Luke is in his first prize fight, and it's like I got to run the whole fight. So so Luke gets in there and brings a couple of lefts, and Luke ducks under, and he takes a shot to the chin, and he's looking at the clock, and I'm writing the whole thing out, and then it's like, okay, and he's waiting for his moment, then pow, pow, kind of, and then just like paragraph after paragraph describing how this fight goes, and a screenwriter writes, they fight, Luke wins, and when I go through and do a degasification pass, that'll take a significant amount of, size off of this beast. Okay, so question time, which means time for the cogitation spectacles here. Roadrunner wants to know what I would know about boasting. I used to be a world-class dipstick of a boaster. I really was. Anybody who's bragging about something is insecure. That is, I've never seen an exception to that rule. Thank you for that, Dave. Dave writes, that's why you need to direct the movie. Yeah. There's a difference between a Fokker D7 and a Pfalz D3, and I don't know how you direct this movie if you're not a pilot, but that decision is not up to me. We will see. So yeah, so I used to be completely insecure about everything, so I would be constantly just kind of showing off, and it's really sad. John Condon, Silverado, high-strung guy. What was his name? It was the Kevin Costner role, wasn't it? Silverado? No. Kevin Costner was the dead friend in The Big Chill, and he had all these scenes, speaking scenes with the entire cast, a huge cast, big names. Kevin Costner was completely unknown. He was the dead friend that they all get together to celebrate, and he's got all these scenes and all these flashback scenes, and he's feeling great. And then they realize, my God, we got a 4-hour movie here, so they cut all of the flashbacks, and all you see is him lying there. And you want to talk about being cut out of a movie, man. That's not like one little scene where you're delivering a pizza and they cut it. He did a lot of work there. Yes, he was in Silverado. He was great in Silverado. I really like him, by the way. I've seen him in some bad movies, but I don't think I've ever seen him bad. And I haven't watched. I don't have time or really the inclination, but I have seen enough clips from Yellowstone to see that he's just doing a crazy good job there. And he did a movie with with Woody Harrelson called I think it's called The Roadman. It's about the two guys that got together to trap and kill Bonnie and Clyde, and that was a tremendously good movie. That was a great little movie that nobody ever saw. All right, here we go. Bum, 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 bum. This was not fixed. Oh, it's because I'm not logged in. Duh. Okay, I feel a little better. Highwayman. Thank you. Yes, not the Highwayman. Boy, I almost panicked there for a second. Website was getting really slow, and it was getting slow because we put the old website on a dedicated server, fastest servers in the business. New website went on it, old website went on it on a different domain. I thought, great, they'll be completely separate, and everything was great. And then the new website started slowing down, and it turned out the old website was pulling so much resources that I had to offload it back to where it was originally, and all these things would be taken care of the second I get this bloody script out the door. Here we go. Hey, who is that guy? Stratopop, questions for 11524. Hey, that'd be us by Marusha Dark. Thank you again, Marusha and Eric and all the rest of you who do all this tremendous work for free behind the scenes, and it just makes these live shows absolutely possible. I don't know what I would do without you guys. Okay, so let's just have a quick scan here. We got a Marusha Dark. We got a response by Joe Schammel. We got another Marusha Dark. So it looks like our response thread. Ian Nolan. Eric Blake. I can only imagine my surprise. Jacob Belchuk is good to see. Let's see. Joseph Pomeroy. Roadrunner. Yep, we'll get them all, by God. Okay, here we go. So, Marusha Dark is first, and here we are. Happy New Year. Maybe 2024 will be better than 23. It's the year of the dragon after all. Well, yes, 2024 will be better than 23 because it's just unimaginable to me how it could be worse, honestly. 23 was a year of tough lessons that were administered, with a enthusiastic amount of corporal punishment for the psyche. And it's already much better. It's funny, because we had, I think we talked about that on Backstage Show or something. But this entire idea of a fresh start is so unbelievably important. Scott was kind of poo-pooing it a little bit, like there's nothing different about January 1st. It's like, well, on one hand, yes. On one hand, it's a spectrum. There's nothing, there are no, like, markers or anything. But on the other hand, it's like, okay, it's a reset. It's like, boom, we just defrag the drives and reformatted them, and now we can start working on something new. So I determined to be a lot more positive in 2024, and so far it's working out for me. God damn it. Anyway, there we go. All right, so Happy New Year to everybody. Belated New Year. Anyways, Bill, you've said before that you got to start as a pundit because you had experience reading from a teleprompter and somebody needed you to fill in for them. In the coming weeks, I plan to make YouTube videos of my own, some of which will necessitate me speaking directly to the camera. I can write and read from a script no problem, especially if I'm allowed to edit in post. However, if I'm looking at my screen while I talk, I'm obviously not looking at the camera. I can't really memorize the entire script, so I thought about maybe going line by line with the text on my monitor, read it, memorize that one line, and then recite it from memory, rinse and repeat, and make jump cuts better. Do you think that's a good solution? I don't. Let me just read the rest of it. I don't have the type of equipment that you or PJ Media have been able to overlay text on a teleprompter lens, so I was wondering what advice you might offer for how to do this and how to have it look professional and natural. Not just for me, but for any amateur with only a phone and a laptop. It would be great if I could make something approaching the same quality as your firewalls. I feel the same way. As an aside, it might make for good stretch for studio content to do videos showcasing how you go about writing, recording, and editing your videos. Maybe even start with your answer here. Cheers. Well, first of all, thank you very much. Marusha, it's always I'm always so grateful for all this stuff you do. So let me see how I can answer that question about the teleprompter. As far as memorizing it line by line goes, I've had a couple of experiences within the last year of having to do that, and they were the experiences when I shot the Cold War, I want to say November of 22, and then the Empire of Terror stuff, which frankly I've blocked out, was 2024 sometime. In both cases there, everything was on a teleprompter, obviously, but there were pickups and promos that needed to be done. And these are, 3-sentence paragraphs. And I had to memorize those because in one case, for example, I'm just reading part of the regular script. They got the camera on a dolly, on a boom arm, and the boom arm comes flying past me, so I can't very well, teleprompter it. So I've found that it's actually harder to memorize individual lines than it is to memorize the entire script. That's my personal belief, and I don't think that'll really work. There's a funny thing about memorization, and I learned this from when I was singing Hot Rod Lincoln, which is an interesting song because there is no chorus. Everything, every line is a new line. And so I had to memorize those lines. So I was just loved the song and I had something to do in the car. So, give an example about memorization though. There was a period when I had it memorized, and as I was kind of singing along with it, I was remembering it. But every now and then you make a mistake, and then all of a sudden, one time I realized I'm not remembering it anymore. I just know. You know, my fenders was clicking the guardrail post. The guy beside me was white as a ghost, and that's when you really have it. Being in a play, obviously everything has to be memorized. If you've got the lead in a play, if you've got Hamlet, for example, you have a lot of memory work to do, and you can, for what it's worth, I just start at the beginning, and then whenever I get tripped up, I start at the beginning again. So I get the beginning memorized, and it's kind of like a running jump, you know, into whatever's next. However, I don't think this is a solution for you at all, Marusha. First of all, I would check, if you haven't already, I would check on Amazon or just do a Google search, because I'm convinced you can find a partially silvered mirror for, well, let's find out. We got a computer here. We got an internet. Let's just see real quick. Just real quick. Oh, God. I got to do all this. Prove I'm not a robot to Amazon because I don't want to order, like, you know, oil or something. All right, so I'm just going to search Amazon for teleprompter. Some of these are real nice. The one that I've got looks like it's about $200. That's the one that I've been using since I got in the studio 10 years ago, and it's pretty cool. I'm just looking for what the lowest price is here. $100 is 60. There's one for 69 that clips onto the top of your monitor. That's interesting. It's not bad. $55 for a Leventry teleprompter. So, you know, I mean, that may be outside your range too, but they're not as expensive as they used to be. $65, because with so many people doing so much video content now, there's a real need for these things. Yeah, $60 is about the lowest I've seen, but you don't need like the super high quality teleprompter because, you know, you're probably going to be using a webcam and so on. I can give you one piece of advice about teleprompter reading, however, and that is this. When you are setting up your teleprompter, you are going to want to put the actual prompter and camera as far away from you as you possibly can and still read the letters. And the reason for that is this. If I'm looking across the room at a teleprompter, and let's say I had the vision I used to have when I was, you know, just a wee lad, then I can pretty much get the entire screen in my field of vision. If, on the other hand, the prompter's right here, then as I read the teleprompter, I'm constantly doing this. And every time I jump down to a new line, it doesn't even look like I'm talking into the camera anymore, because no matter what I'm doing, I'm always going back and forth with the eyes, and it just doesn't seem to make much sense. So you want a smaller angle. You want to get that thing out there. Now, as a solution that you may want to try, because I mentioned this before, I saw a very, very, very convincing demo of a person just doing this, like just reading like I'm reading here. As an aside, it might make good Stratosphere Studios content to do videos showing how you go about writing, editing, recording of your videos, that kind of thing, looking down. And it just plain uses AI and just gets you right to the camera. And I thought, oh, this is going to be choppy, but it wasn't. It was perfect. If I hadn't known, I wouldn't have known. So there's a software solution that I'm gonna try. I'm especially going to try it during story mechanics, because people I'm going to be interviewing are not going to be looking directly at the camera. They're going to be almost certainly looking at the screen, and so you get that we've had this problem ever since we've had video calls, is that you want to look at the screen, but the camera can't be in the screen, so all you see is your relative or loved one, or impending assassin or whatever, whoever the hell you're talking to, and they're looking off to the side, and all they see is you looking off to the side, and it's not quite the same thing. In any event, the software solution that I saw was really, really good, Marusha. What was it? I don't remember, but I'll find it. And it really was impressive. If you search on YouTube for AI AI line of sight or AI direct to camera or something like that, it'll come up. I don't know what the charge for it is, but it was really impressive. So hopefully that'll do it for you. Ian Nolan, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too, Ian. I'm proud to say that our project for the past few years not only completed, but just got published in the Wall Street Journal. Just passing this on. Let's have a look at that line. Oh my God, man, this is a beautiful article. In Sedona, a rust-covered home is disguised by the desert landscape. I don't know if that's you, but I'm going to assume it might be. So I'm looking at a nice modern website, much like our new website. And somebody's got apparently looks like it's a steel house, and they let it rust. And it just perfectly matches the background, because I'm pretty sure that the background red in Sedona is bright red. I'm pretty sure most of that is iron oxide. So yeah, it's practically camouflages itself. Anyway, Wall Street Journal, man, that's quite an achievement. So congratulations on that. Definitely. That's very impressive. Here we go. Anyhow, here's a fun question I came up with over the holidays. The high of the last cycle had America booming in a lot of ways, but one of the things that was a cultural wasteland was our food scene, which was still trying to figure out if food industrialization could produce high culture, and so we ended up with Jell-O vegetable terrines, Frankfurter crown roasts, and other unmentionables. What's the worst abomination you ever witnessed? All right, so you're very welcome, Marusha. So the first time I ever heard the word blog, and the first blog I ever read was James Lilacs' The Institute of Official Cheer. It's still one of my favorite places to go, and if I'm feeling a little low, I probably go maybe once a year or 18 months or something. But for those of you unfamiliar with him, everybody was more prominent back in the early days of the blogosphere, 2003 and 4 and 5, before YouTube and Facebook and stuff. But Lilacs writes in that article every day, and he collects memorabilia, which is almost always Americana memorabilia, which sounds like a Latin name for some kind of a fish or something. And he's got such a sharp sense of humor, and the thing that's most amazing about Lilacs is his observational abilities. He will see details in a photograph, make a joke about it, and you didn't even realize it was there, and then you look again, and there it is. He's got a section on the Institute of Official Cheer called the Gallery of Regrettable Food, and it is exactly what you're talking about there. It was a case where after the war, you had all these married couples, and you had all these housewives, and they were having kids, and and then dad's doing better, and so you got to constantly be entertaining, and so these food companies put out recipe books, and Jell-O's a great example. So Jell-O puts out a recipe book for you so that you can entertain your friends. 1959 or somewhere in that ancient past, something like that. And guess what? Of the 30 recipes in that book, every single one of them uses Jell-O, and it'll be like raw liver chunks in Jell-O, or uncooked asparagus in Jell-O, and it's just freaking horrifying. Well, nonprofit. Well, call me when you make a profit. Horrifying, and some of them are like, sponsored by like like cottage cheese, and they're these casseroles, and the photography is so poor. I don't mean to make anybody sick or anything, but honestly, it's like half of the items in the gallery of regrettable food look like tumors. I mean, it's freaking unbelievable, awful, 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 awful. And James is all over that, and very funny with it. In terms of the worst thing I've ever eaten, I can tell you the first thing to come to mind, but I'm not sure this is the record holder, but it sure does seem like it. I do not eat any kind of seafood at all. I don't. I grew up in the ocean. I started scuba diving when I was 6, snorkeling when I was 3. So I know what goes on down there, and I don't want any part of it. To be perfectly honest with you, a significant part of that aversion to seafood may have resulted from, this is completely dead serious, the hotel that my dad managed that I grew up in was called the Carlton Beach Hotel, later Sonesta Beach Hotel, and then it became something else. Now it's gone. But it had a little cove, and then off to the side were some rocks, and in Bermuda's a volcanic, peak. So all the rocks are gray with the bubbles in them. It's all former magma. And around the side there was a great place to go fishing because the water was significantly deeper there, 20 feet maybe, crystal clear. And it was just a really good fishing spot. So my dad put a rail up there and so on. And then what we would do I almost said tourists, but then I corrected myself. What we would do for our guests was, if they wanted to go fishing, they could obviously rent fishing rods and so on. And the bait that we used was frozen squid. It was a great bait, but it was frozen squid. And so they'd take a big block of, in a plastic bag of frozen squid, and Lord Bios, I just got to get this in there because this is one of the great dad jokes of all time. Lord Bios says those rocks were magna before it was cool. Well played. Raw frozen squid, and when you leave it out in the sun, it turns out that frozen squid becomes unfrozen, and if you leave it out there for a couple days, like if you just left it there and you went back to your room, then it starts to smell and get kind of nasty. And that smell was with me a lot, and so I didn't. I don't know. I just don't eat any kind of seafood at all. Years and years before I met Natasha, right as I started doing the blogging and stuff, I met a guy who was a Russian immigrant to L.A. And he begged me to well, he didn't beg me. He asked me to come over for dinner, and I was very happy to do that because I really wanted to talk to him. He was a really smart guy, and I was just starting on all this. This is before I knew everything. And so I went, and when I was there, he was serving a Russian dinner, which if my wife is watching, is absolutely delicious, and if she isn't, then I'll have to go to when they're awful people. But Vice did the first time I ever encountered Vice TV was when they did a multi-part series on inside North Korea. They got inside North Korea, and they were talking about the food there, and this would be the better food, because they're tourists. And the guy said, I don't know how to describe it other than to say it was some kind of, it was matter. That's all I know. Matter. It was matter. It was some kind of physical substance. I don't know what it tasted like. It tasted awful. It didn't taste like food. I don't even know if it was food, but it was definitely matter. So I thought, yeah. So anyway, I'm over there and I'm picking at the things I can eat, and a lot of the stuff I just couldn't. And anyway, this guy put this like kind of raw pickled salmon down or something, and he leaned on me so hard. I've withstood everything. I get leaned on a lot for things like that, but I just say no. And this one time I felt, you know what, I'm in his home, he invited me here. He said, just try a little corner, just try a corner. So I tried a corner of this like pickled raw salmon, and that was the worst thing I've tasted in a long, long time. I don't I don't think I can top that. I do recall being a little boy with my younger brother and my cousin Roy, who we visited in Pennsylvania. He'd come and visit us in Bermuda. And we had what was the name of that soda? It's not a major brand. It's not 7. It was High C, maybe. It was a, you know, I don't know if it was a European brand. Anyway, it was a can of soda, a bottle of soda. And we decided we were going to make something. So we put a bottle of that into a pot, and we added like chocolate syrup, and we added ketchup, and anything we could find. Anything we could find, and stirred that baby up and poured it back in there and took a drink of it. And as I recall, it wasn't too bad, but kind of like a root beer float, you know, which is freaking bargain delicious. But I got to go with the that raw pickled salmon. That was that I nearly lost it there. I didn't, but I nearly did. The Russian food is very different than our food. Marrying a Russian woman well, she's not a Russian woman, she's an American citizen, but in the amount of time it took to become an American citizen, one of the things that was like constant was every time we would go anywhere, she would say, "This is the most delicious thing I've ever tasted." We just keep topping and, you know, just better. Oh my God, it's unbelievable. And she's got there's a little Russian supermarket here, very close to where we live, and a lot of times she'll go and bring Russian food back, and she'll say, "Try this," and I go, "Oh honey, that's delicious. Want some more?" "No, baby, I just ate. I just finished eating." So no, but that was really, really good, and it actually got her attention. I said, "Honey, Russian food, different kinds of Russian food taste different from each other, but they all taste Russian." And she said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" I said, "Well, same thing for Italian food. You know, the different Italian dishes all taste different from each other, but they all taste Italian." And I'd be doing the Italian food before the Russian food, and a number of other nations as well. So probably sleeping in the doghouse tonight. I don't have a dog or a doghouse, but I'm supposed I'm going to have to go out and buy one now. All right. So there's that. Eric Blake, and if we get through all the questions and it's a relatively short night, forgive me, but the Never-Ending Story Part Biplane Boogaloo is it's like the monster in Forbidden Planet. You know, it's invisible, but it's just here, and keep shooting at it, and it's like never goes away. So Eric Blake is here, and the man with the hat's in the office tonight. Come on in if you want a Happy New Year. Sounds a little sketchy, but okay. Marusha Dark says, "I once heard that German food is filling but not tasty, French food is tasty but not filling, and Italian food is tasty and filling." Sounds good to me. I'm very proud of my British heritage, extremely proud of it. But in terms of food, I think it's probably the worst food in the world. I think that's why the British Empire, why that one little tiny island could conquer the entire planet, you know, and at its height have something like a quarter of the land mass of the Earth was technically under the jurisdiction of this one little tiny island. And I think it's because they were desperately trying to find something else to eat, because the typical English British like diet food, you know, just their custom food, it's like, you know, like bangers and Nash and toad in the hole and you know and jellied eels, and it's just like I can't even say them, let alone eat them, you know. So anyway, there we go. So back to Eric. So in a recent business forum, Elon Musk told all the companies who pulled their ads from Twitter X to go, and I quote, "go F yourselves." He then smilingly waved and went, "Hi, Bob," a direct shot at Bob Iger, who earlier that forum noted, like a good politician, I respect Elon a great deal, but yes, that was an epic moment. That's what I want. You know, they talk about, you know, if you make enough money, you want to get to the point where you've got FU money, but being the richest man in the world means you got FU money, and you can say FU to the head of Disney, which owns everything. So good for them. I just think that's the answer. Well, we're going to pull our ads if you don't do what we want you to do. Well, then, you know, FU, have a nice time. We don't need your business. We want it, but we don't need it. So that was cool. Now, it just so happens, Bill, that Wall Street billionaire Nelson Peltz, Republican, by the way, is currently waging a long-term campaign to secure multiple seats on the Disney board of directors, a self-identified Restore the Magic campaign. He's gained an ally in retired Marvel co-CEO Ike Perlmutter, known Trump supporter, by the way. Okay, let's give credit where credit is due. This is the Eric Blake strategy for getting Disney back. And Eric Blake is the guy who came up with the name Major Mace Mattingly, and I'll be many things, but I'll be damned if I will be a uncrediting plagiarist if I can help it. So Eric was talking about that earlier. Just buy stock and use that kind of leverage. Of course, Elon's word of advice way back to Netflix aside, I wouldn't think he's got an entertainment studio on his to-do list, but alas, the current richest man in the world now stands insulted, sir, and I imagine he wants satisfaction. So at the very least, it might behoove Mr. Peltz to call him up and go, hey, want to help me make Iger go F himself? What say you, Bill? I may be wishing upon a star here, but still, there's a great big beautiful tomorrow, just a dream away. Elon Musk has got something that previous richest men in the world like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos don't have. He's got a lot that they don't have, but the first thing that comes to mind is he's got an imagination, and the second thing that comes to mind is he's got a sense of humor. When you get to be that rich, everything you do is essentially FU money. You can do whatever you want to. But Elon he's one of them, but he's not one of them. I saw in the comment section earlier, because I think they've got another Falcon Heavy launch, but that first launch of the Falcon Heavy where you see a red roadster and a guy in that super cool modern spacesuit. When you see those SpaceX guys walking out that gantry to the Dragon capsule, and the gantry looks like a hallway in a really, really expensive dentist's office, and you see these guys in these tight-fitting suits, and you look at this is what the 21st century is supposed to look like. And then to launch the car instead of, concrete or something, and then to have it play David Bowie and have Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy on the navigation screen. I mean, all of that stuff is fun. The recovery vessel is called Of Course I Still Love You, and the other one's called something like Why Don't You Read the Instructions? That's playfulness, actually, is the word I'm looking for. Playfulness. It's fun. So you got a mission, meaning the Uber mission going to Mars or whatever the case may be. And you're going to do it, and you're going to have fun doing it, not because that'll slow you down, but because that will keep you going when things get a little rough. People having a good time. And he's just cool. I mean, he's really like the only cool billionaire I can possibly remember. Now, on the other hand, guys like Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, Bezos, and a bunch of others are cardboard cutouts of people. They're clearly missing something. Clearly missing something. I suppose that's why you get to be a billionaire. I grow ever more convinced that Bill Gates is maybe one of the most evil people in the world, and has a potential to be one of the most evil people that ever lived. But Bill Gates is not a human in the way that we understand humanity, and neither is Zuckerberg. People talk about, reptiles, reptilian takeover. I believe that's true figuratively, not literally. But I really do think there's a case to be made. These guys, Fauci's like that too, although he's not nearly that rich, obviously. But they're reptilian because they don't have that limbic system. They don't have that kind of emotional base structure that mammals have, you know. They don't seem to have any human connections, and they don't seem to be concerned about anything other than their objectives. And yeah, Sad Wings Raging said lizard brains. Yeah, they're lizard brains. They've got ice water for veins in their veins, and they'll do something that may seem right to them, or may seem smart to them rather. So if it seems smart to them, they'll do it. And the question of whether this is the right thing to do rather than the smart thing to do doesn't even enter their heads. It's just the wire's just not there. I really do believe that this cabal that has emerged over the years, but especially since the election and the pandemic, they just kind of come to the surface. Like Klaus Schwab, for example, great example. That guy is a reptile. Again, I'm speaking. He's literally a reptile. So he's figuratively a reptile. But there is something extremely reptilian about him. There's something reptilian about Yavan, or whatever that computer science guy is. You know, the Twigs for Arms giant. You know, he looks like the Brain, except not as good looking. And how the purpose of humanity is to make itself extinct so that we can launch the next species. Or, you know, it's like, dude, you know, and Elon has challenged these people, and that's what tells me he's different. I think he was in a discussion with one of these guys. I think it might have been one of the founders of Alphabet, one of the Google guys, and they were discussing something about the future. This scares me to death, actually. Talking about some planet or another, and, you know, Elon's been involved with AI and stuff, and I think they were getting into an argument about this. And Elon said, but that doesn't help humanity. I mean, how does that help humanity? And this guy, dead serious, said, oh, you're a speciesist. So so benefiting humanity is more important than discovering how to do this thing. It must, yeah, of course it is. He's different. So Elon has the kind of money to buy Twitter and have it be a, you know, not an inconvenience, but you get the idea. Elon is the only person that I can think of on the board, with the possible exception of, what's his name, Thiel, who has the kind of money to change the board. He changed the board when he bought Twitter. He changed the social, game board. He restored all those people who'd been banned because they said something that, you know, progressives didn't like. Lots of progressives volitionally left. Fantastic, great. That's your business. You can come and go, whatever you want. But for me, the mountain is YouTube, and that is that's tough to replace, because it's relatively simple, and when we're talking about billionaire money, but in terms of billionaire money, it's not terribly expensive to build something like Rumble. But getting people to leave YouTube and go to Rumble, it's like, I look at Rumble, we host our videos on Rumble because they can't take them down. Thank you very much, Sad Wings Raging, with another $10 for the Taffy 3 jar. We appreciate that very much. If you're gonna try and outcompete YouTube, you've got to have that kind of verve, you know, that kind of verve, that kind of élan, that kind of, you know, ce ne sais quoi. I don't know what those words mean, but I've heard them used in this kind of context. So if you're going to replace YouTube, you can't just mechanically replace it the way that Rumble has. You've got to have somebody who makes it cool. It's got to be cooler than YouTube, not just not YouTube. And he's about the only guy that can do that. And that would be an ultimate game changer. I believe that Elon Musk, I'm actually going to send a well, I don't know what they're called anymore if they're not tweets anymore. But I'm going to send a message and I'm going to include him at it. And I'm basically going to say something to the effect of, Elon, I know what's going on here. You are hang on. Something to the effect of you're heading to the blue skies of the red planet to get away from the red tape on the blue planet. Something like that. I had it a little more pointy, a little sharper than that. But yeah, I think he's going to Mars mostly because he wants to be left alone. We have a section in the can, a right angle, one of mine, about private ownership of space. I'll be seeing that in the next day or two, I think so. So there's that. Let me make sure I know I shockingly got off the track here. Okay. So hopefully that... So Elon basically had a meeting with Tucker Carlson, and Elon essentially funded Tucker Carlson. That's what I understand from the outside. He could have done that across the board, and maybe he will. But he also seems like he's rather busy right now. So the fact that he took Twitter out of the hands of the communists that's a big deal. And I don't know how far he's going to go down the road with that fight, but I hope he does. We'll see. He cares about things like free speech, and like I said, he stood up to another one of his ilk. A billionaire who's trying to create AI that'll exterminate the human race. Not exterminate. Make the human race redundant, obsolete. Better word. And he said this is a terrible idea, and these reptiles look. What do you mean it's a terrible idea? It's really hard to do, and then we can all, move our consciousness into these electronic bodies and we'll all live forever like gods. Okay, good luck with that. Hopefully that does it for you here. All right, so we have Jacob Belchek. Hail, Bill. Listen to your live speaking engagement from last year, and I must say it makes me happy to see you on stage doing what you do best. Hope you get more of that in the future. You deserve nothing less. Thank you very much. That was very kind of you. I love talking about these ideas from a stage, and especially with a big room, and that wasn't a particularly big room, but a big room that's really on your side. I am real comfortable out there. My question tonight has to do with the ideas that you developed there. So I did last thing I posted on the website in terms of live speaking was I took a look at the biology of, just poking around the edges, the biology of the fourth turning theory. I think that's what he's talking about. My question tonight has to do with the ideas that you developed there. You described the civilizational cycle as one that is fundamentally biological, and you cited a few animal examples of this. As humans, we're equipped with biological circuitry to drive behavior like this, but unlike animals, we are ensouled beings capable of reason. That's a lovely little phrase right there, ensouled beings capable of reason. That's quite a beautiful sentence. Do you think that the presence of these two attributes changes the nature of this cycle at all? Do you think it's possible to have an idea that is immune to the 80-year cycle? That's a great question. That's a really, really good question. My first take on it, Jacob, is this. No matter where you are in the cycle, in terms of what the generation is doing, what Gen X is doing, what the boomers are doing, I'm fully convinced that there have been millions and millions of people who've been fully aware of this cycle. Doesn't matter where they're born, they're immune to the cycle because they read history and they care enough to dig into it. So we have people of various ages here. Our Stratosphere Lounge audience ranges from very old on one end to like incredibly ancient on the other. But there are people that always get it. So it is possible. So it's not like this is a It's not like the biology overrides reason. It's that the biology moves enough people that it becomes a force of nature, becomes something elemental to deal with. The for example, one thing I've noticed among all of these body cam videos that I've been watching in my abundant spare time, Bart's Treasure says the so-called 80-year cycle doesn't exist. World War II is only one generation apart. You have to cherry pick history to make it fit. You wrote World War II and World War II is only one generation apart. I suppose you meant World War I and World War II. Well, not to start a giant flame war here, but World War I was not an existential threat to the country, and World War II was. But anyway, I'm moving past that. One of the things that seems that I've noticed in common with the Gen Z people that are getting pulled over by the police, these are things that are almost universal. I've talked about how they think that the entire idea of a driver's license is just a kind of a boomer thing. It's like, do you have a Field and Stream subscription that I can see? It's like, no, I don't have one. I don't have a license. Just, okay. It's just, there's no, it's not even that there's no respect for authority so much as there's no even recognition that authority exists. Which is why they're constantly telling the police what the police can and cannot do. And when they get pulled over, they'll say, you have no right to search me. Show me your search warrant to search me. And the cops try to explain to them, we have probable cause based on your driving behavior. I detect the strong smell of alcohol coming off of you, blah, blah, blah. There's an open container in plain sight here. That is enough reason for me to suspect that you're driving under the influence and search you as we put you into custody. But they're convinced that the law is there only to protect them and their interests at any given time. And what's especially hilarious is, I actually thought I'd do a little spoof on this. Maybe I can with Unreal Engine. You'd be shocked at how many young people, mostly young people, not exclusively but almost always Gen Zers, who when they get pulled over at some point, well, if it's a body cam video, it's because they're getting arrested. At some point, they will say, I want to speak to my lawyer. Call my lawyer. They'll often tell the police to call their lawyer. Call the arrestee's lawyer. And they really believe this. They really, really have watched so much TV that they actually believe, number one, that the police are not allowed to do anything if there's not a lawyer there for the defense and a search warrant in hand. But what's more incredible than that is that they seem to believe that there's some kind of elite lawyer squad that, basically orbits above every city and, in coal black C-130s, equipped with the oxygen masks, and these guys do like these halo insertions, high altitude, low opening, and you got in trouble, you call this lawyer, and this lawyer comes out of this plane and next thing lands on the parachute, comes out and says, all right, officer, now let's have a look at this thing. It's like, it's 2:00 in the morning and you're saying you're not going to get in the police car because you want to talk to your lawyer. You got a lot of learning to do. So this is like a generational thing, and this is the way that the pendulum is swinging. But at the same time, that's not to say that there aren't tens of millions of Gen Zers who are perfectly capable of understanding that when you get pulled over, you don't start calling the cops MFers right out of the gate. And when they tell you to get out of the car, they get out of the car. So it's not like the biology is, it really deserves a deeper answer than that. It's not like the biology. Thank you very much, Levko, with the super chat. Came in late. Hope you're doing well. Very kind of you. Thank you. It's like it's a question of self-awareness, and there are people who are of every generation, going back to Gronk and and the cavemen up in the hills, who are fully informed about things that are totally incorrect, and so this is kind of the whole reason why we're here. It's like the idea is not that that this is like an inevitable thing, although I think the larger cycle is inevitable. The practical result of this, if it's true, is that there has to be a remnant. There has to be the keepers of the flame. People have to hold on to these ideas when things get bad so that they're there when they get good. And that, I think, is completely independent of biology. One thing we know for a fact, I was at the Rose Bowl parade. First time ever. I've lived here since '88. But Natasha had a invitation, and there was an open parking lot, so I went. And we were I thought we were at the very beginning of the parade when everybody's going to be really snappy, but I had the route going backwards, and so turned out we were at the end of the 5-mile parade, so everybody's just completely just dog-tired when they get there. Still, it was an amazing thing. But one of the things I noticed was that it's harder to tell among the marching bands. Lots and lots and lots of marching bands on the Rose Bowl parade. Most of them are high schools. I guess there's a giant lottery or something, and you have to compete to get in it, and you have to be a certain level of quality or whatever. But there were probably, I don't know, 15 or 20 high schools marching bands. And they were great. They were great. But what I noticed two things. One of them was that you couldn't see it so much in the band uniform, because the band uniform is just essentially a giant sheet of extremely ugly polyester that you just drape over people. So they all look the same, with the exception of the Florida Gator band, the Pride of the Sunshine. Those guys look fabulous. But one thing I noticed is that with the flag girls, who are almost universally in tights, like gymnast outfits, is that the flag girls I saw on the Rose Bowl parade on the morning of the 24th, on the morning of January 1st, 2024, looked like they ate the flag girls that I remember when I was in high school. And I went and looked at some pictures, so it wasn't just a question of, me having a rosy view of the past. They are easily half again the weight of what they used to be. Now, I was thinking about this a lot, and I thought, well, weight gain is a result of, more calories coming in than you spend. No matter how you dice it, that's ultimately what it comes down to. If you burn more calories than you take in, then you will lose weight. If you take in more calories than you burn, you will gain weight. That's how it works. And our bodies are designed to sort fat because we have not evolved past. The reason we have this enormous level of intestines is because, we're built to survive on roots and berries and twigs and stuff. You got to eat a lot of roots and berries to just maintain starvation level. If we gave our current diet another 100,000 years or so, we'd probably have an intestine that's 4 feet long, because you can take a lot of energy out of a bunch of ho-hos and wingdings and Twinkies. The energy density of that food is much, 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 much more compact. So we've got this digestive system designed to pull nutrition out of low density food, and now we're eating food with so much caloric density that our bodies have no choice but to store it, because that's what they're built for. So on one level, there's the input. Now the Roadrunner says Twinkies will be around in 40,000 years. Yes, they will. Spy Magazine did a hilarious thing on Twinkies. I'll get to these super chats in a second if you don't mind. So that's one end of it. So clearly, there's no question that 17-year-old today is burning a lot less energy than a 17-year-old in 1977. I never see Gen Z riding bicycles, ever, unless it's to be seen riding a bicycle. But in terms of getting around, I don't see it at all. I don't ever see them out playing football or anything like that, or soccer. We had a great Christmas tradition that we held for 15 years or so, and that was my friend Fritz organized. We would play touch football on Christmas Day, find a high school field, and we would just go out, and there'd usually be 10 or 15 of us. And every Christmas Day, we'd just go out there and play touch football for several hours. And all of that energy was energy we burned. We were outside a lot more. We just did a lot more physical activity. So back to the flag girls. So they've got both things working against them. They're taking in much more much denser calorie intake, and they're also spending a lot less energy, so they're not expending calories, so they're on a massive surplus of calories. Now that's, I'm not so much interested in the exercise part of it, because I don't think that can be changed. People are going to be on their phones, and Gen Z doesn't spend any time outdoors because it's never been outdoors. But I'm utterly convinced that the food, that if we could go back and eat the actual food from 1977, virtually all of this fat would disappear. Virtually all of it. When Natasha and I got the bug, I didn't eat anything for 11 days. I was lucky if I could just drink water. And after not eating for 11 days, by the way, if you really do want to lose serious weight, then I cannot recommend highly enough the Wuhan weight loss clinic, where I went and lost, I don't know, 17 pounds, I think. So after not eating for 17 days, except for, pot roast or turkey dinner or something. No, but seriously, eating almost nothing for that time, when you start eating food again, you realize that everything is so sweet because they put this high fructose corn syrup in everything because it's delicious. But if you look at the people, just look at Star Trek, for example. Look at Star Trek, the original series, and realize that William Shatner as Captain Kirk in the original series was considered overweight and seriously overweight, like enough overweight that they had to redesign. The reason he's got the green captain's jersey is because it gave him a belt to kind of hold his gut in. But you look at William Shatner in any one of the seasons of the original series, and he doesn't look fat. He certainly doesn't look fat by today's standards. If you look at Leonard Nimoy or DeForest Kelley standing there, they are rail thin compared to today. So clearly there's stuff that's just being chucked into our food. And if anybody's had the unfortunate experience of trying to buy peaches or something, that you, at least here in California, you get these things that are about as hard as a baseball, and they don't get ripe. They just turn into soggy cardboard. And they also don't taste like peaches. But they last forever and they look good, and that's apparently what people are buying. So I'm not blaming the supermarkets or even the mega food companies, although they've got something to be part of. It's that consumers, don't want to buy bruised peaches, so the farmers and the people who deliver the food decided, well, give people what they want. If they want better looking peaches that taste like baseballs, then that's what they'll buy. So that's what you get. But I would be genuinely curious to know. I don't know how you would do it, but I really think it would be interesting to go to eat the food that I ate in 1977, including things like Burger King and and all the rest of it, and see what happens to your weight. So that was alarming, seeing how fat these 17-year-olds were. I mean, this is their peak physical condition, and it was really shocking. But one thing I noticed too, and this is really fascinating to me because this one's much more complex. I noticed that there were some bands that were fatter than others. And how do you explain that? Well, it's clearly where they come from. But some bands would be noticeably fatter. The entire band, including the Fly Girls, noticeably fatter than another band. And I seemed to make a correlation that it seemed like the smaller the town was, the less overweight they were. But all of them were heavier than we were. But there was a remarkable geographical difference, noticeable, if not remarkable, difference in how overweight they were based on their geography. And that tells me something. This whole reason that people, the genuinely really fat people like Al Roker, lose weight, and it doesn't look good on them. John Goodman thin is not. I mean, I want him to live forever because I love him, but he's not. You know, I don't know. But the reason that these people do it is because they have like this gastric bypass. They take out a, I don't know, a couple hundred yards of intestines or something like that, or they put a clip on the stomach to make the stomach smaller. What they're basically doing is shortening the amount of time that food's in your system, and you're sucking the nutrients out of it. And they're artificially creating the kind of digestive tract that we would have if we had 100,000 years to adapt to this level of prosperity. So this is all connected to the biological question you were talking about with the cycle. On that note, just let me hang on real quick because I do not want to miss these super chats. So hold that thought. We have one from looks like Lapco92. Let me see. Yes, Lapco92. Thank you. Super chat says, speaking of movie night, don't forget 123 with James Cagney, filmed in West Berlin in '61. They had to halt when the wall went up and finish in Munich. You and your wife will enjoy it. I've never heard of 123, so that's a recommendation I will look into. Thank you very much. And then from Kasama 001, there's another super chat. If you call your lawyer at 2 a.m., you soon find out that you need a new lawyer. Yeah. One thing I've learned in life is spend every penny you can possibly afford on either doctors or lawyers. I've told the story many times of when I was back in Florida the second time, and I signed up to be an actor in their mock trials, and these are practicing district attorneys and public defenders, and it's just terrifying how stupid these people were, and how incredibly weak the defense was. Anyway, so the biological things that are happening is they're getting heavier, no question, but there's also no question that testosterone levels are falling. A lot of that has to do with the fact that nobody's doing physical work. My doctor told me that really the only way to raise your internal testosterone levels are to do leg presses, the big muscles of your thighs. It's the only thing that will consistently do it. And so all of this makes the men softer and more effeminate and more, I suspect, more emotional, although roid rage is just the opposite. In any event, that's how they're behaving. And this is making the women nuts. And the terrible thing about this theory is that essentially what it's saying is the solution to this is to go through a period of 15, 20 years where there's not very much food. Good Lord, Steve Whoop says he used to be able to leg press 1,100. Is that grams? That's a big number. So we know that things can't continue the way they are. And when you are, so here's kind of where I was going with this, Jacob. I didn't actually say this on the speech, but this is why I love doing the show, because I always see these new insights based on the questions. The biology, just take body weight, for example. Think about how body weight affects your psychology. Most of the Gen Zers I see are overweight and physically pretty weak. So if you're overweight and weak and you're connected to everybody by the phone, and the phone is your lifeline, this is one thing they all have in common is, I want my phone, I want to use my phone, can I have my phone, give me my phone, I need to call my parents. And, so the phone is real important. But if you're overweight and out of shape and not very physically strong, you're going to have an attitude about things that goes with that. You're going to have an attitude about authority that goes with that. You've essentially been fed and overfed your entire life, which means on some level that the weight issue is a function of somebody has been stuffing food into your mouth and did not have the discipline to stop when you got to your normal weight, which tells me that they didn't have the discipline to tell you to stop, doing a bunch of things that you shouldn't be doing. And this is how this kind of thing just sort of, builds up head of steam. I was really mostly talking about things like RK theory, and there was when I was really deep into the RK thing, there was another book about how testosterone cycles are predicated on crises and how all this stuff fits together and that. But I'll tell you this. There's no question that if you just look at the movie stars of the 40s, those men look like men, and my dad was Don Draper, and John Hamm is when he's in makeup and costume, is a real masculine-looking, old-school, high testosterone male. Once you get him out of the suit and the haircut and the shave, then he's just wearing a t-shirt and he's got the growth, and his hair's kind of shaggy and he just looks like just any other dweeb. But as Don Draper, he's like a walking god, and that kind of physical presence also affects your psychology. It's clearly you can afford to be more aggressive if you're more confident, and if you look like Don Draper, your confidence level is high, and high confidence is a spiral, just like low confidence is. If you deal with situations confidently, you will see positive results, and that will make you more confident, and less insecure. You'll get to the point when it's like, okay, I don't need this deal, thanks. I really don't. I think I'll just pass on this one. Yeah, so he's, he is a man, not just a male, and there's very few of them out there now. And Battle Smurf says, Bill, how many of the men of the 40s were farm boys of the 20s and 30s? Virtually all of them. I remember it was during I think it was right when I started at PJTV, so 2008 or 9. I remember there was an announcement that said, right around 2009, that said that as of now, more Americans live in cities than they do in rural areas. The first time that the urban population total outweighed the rural population. And there's another thing too. Our Gras says that plastic and everything is also killing testosterone levels. Yeah. I wonder why my testosterone levels seem to be falling. It's a mystery. So obviously there's things like physical strength, but just things like confidence. You don't go to the moon without confidence. You don't that whole kind of golden era post World War II of this cycle kind of thing was basically predicated on the idea that it's like, well, why not? Well, it's really difficult, engineering feat going to the moon. Well, get on it. What do we need to do? Get on it. Well, why are you going? Because I feel like it. Because I feel like going. And as your confidence goes down and down and down, you get more and more passive, less willing to become the author of your life rather than an audience member. Life happens to you rather than you just walking through life and saying, I'll take that and I don't want any of these. So all of this stuff kind of flows together. It doesn't affect everybody, but it doesn't have to. Once it starts to pick up steam, it's there. And the number of people who are 18, 19, 20 years old who have just out of the gate told policemen to go F themselves is, yeah, that's why I did it, Lapco. It was a little joke there, the water thing. It is alarming because they really think that things like law is optional. They've never been. I'll tell you the one thing that I notice a lot in these body cam videos is they never stop talking, ever. They never ever stop talking. And the reason they never stop talking is because up until that moment that the handcuffs go on, Up until that moment, they've been able to talk their way out of anything, either talk their way out of it or just plain wear their parents down, or whoever. Just going to keep talking and keep talking and talking. Well, I smelled alcohol on your breath. That's one of the reasons I have probable cause. Yeah, well, how do you prove that? Prove it to me that you smelled alcohol on my breath. How do you prove that? It's just like argue everything. And if they find something, they go, oh, you searched my car without a warrant. You're not allowed to do that. No, we are, actually. It's a tow inventory. It's been the Supreme Court's looked at it and said it's constitutional. No, you're not allowed to search my car without a warrant. That means this whole arrest is illegal, which means you're all going to get fired, and I'm going to sue the police department. And all. They're all just so, they're so argumentative, and they're so certain that they're right about things that they're not right about. I guess that's why I like watching them. It's fun to watch. It's fun to watch people saying, it's fun to watch somebody where a policeman goes up to you and says, you're under arrest, and have them say, no, I'm not. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that. Sir, you're under arrest. No, I'm not. You are under arrest. Please turn around, put your hands behind your back. No, I'm not under arrest. I wasn't driving drunk. I wasn't driving drunk. I didn't do it. And then when they get put in the car, it's the same thing over and over again. I didn't do anything. What did I do? Explain to me what I do. This is how 4-year-olds think. I didn't do anything, meaning I didn't get caught with the cookie. The cookie's missing from the jar, but Mom didn't see it in my hand. So I didn't do anything. And the way they think is, yes, I drove drunk, but I didn't kill anybody, so what's the problem? So anyway, people in YouTube are talking about George Reeves and the Superman TV show, which I grew up on. I thought he was great. You look at him now, and he's just a relatively strong-looking male. He's not like terribly muscular or anything, but he looked like a man. Henry Cavill looks like a man. He's got a man's face. He doesn't look like a child. So anyway, let me see if I managed to dance all the way around that question. Yeah, so I talked about the biology, and it's like, do you think the presence of these attributes ensouled beings capable of reason? All right, so I'm glad I went back to that. So you're arguing, and I think you're 100% right, that the presence of a soul and the presence of the ability to reason should be able to overcome biology. And the answer is yes. And for people that have a soul and who are reasonable, it does overcome biology. I'm not affected by this cycle. It doesn't affect my behavior. I'm still the same old, happy-go-lucky kid I used to be. Because I have reason and I have empathy. And so I'm immune to this stuff. When you see these people being arrested, it's clear that none of them have reason. They can't reason their way into understanding that there are things that you're not allowed to do. They can't get to that place because they've never run into it before. It's completely it's virgin territory for them. So the reason part isn't there. The question is about the soul part. Not on all of them, but on many of them, if not most of them. When you get these young people, not exclusively young people, but mostly young people, and mostly young women, almost always young women, they will get in the back of the police car, they'll close the door, and they're being driven to jail. And once the door closes and the car starts moving to jail is the moment they realize that they cannot talk themselves out of this anymore. Constant pattern is constantly arguing. I just live around the corner. I only had 2 beers. Just argue. Once that door closes and the car starts moving on the way to jail, instantly they realize they're not going to be able to talk themselves out of it. And then they go into hostile mode. That's when they start talking to the police like, you guys are just too stupid to get a real job. And, and you guys are a bunch of losers and all the rest of it stuff. But there are a number of these kids get in the backseat of the car, almost exclusively women, and they start screaming at the top of their lungs. I mean, absolutely screaming. Start kicking the glass as hard as they possibly can, banging their heads against the window, trying to knock themselves unconscious. And you look at this, and you think, this is not we don't need a psychiatrist here. We need an exorcist. This is possession. These people are possessed, and that is a sight. It's really a sight to see. These people lose their minds. And this is another common thread that surprises me, really. But again, pretty much universally, I've seen 100 of these things now. Universally, it's like, don't touch me. Don't touch me. You cannot touch me. You don't have the right to touch me. Don't touch me. I'll get in the police car if you don't touch me. Let go of me and I'll get in the police car. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. It's across the board there. Don't touch me. And I'm thinking, that wouldn't be my reaction if I got handcuffed and a police officer grabbed me by the arm and leading me to the car. I wouldn't be screaming, don't touch me, and I sure wouldn't be freaking out about it. This is an honest, legitimate question. Is that because I played touch football and things like that and rode bikes and climbed trees and stuff that they didn't? But don't touch me. Where's my phone? I didn't do anything. And you ruined my life, officer. I was driving drunk. I was doing 115 miles an hour in a 60 zone or a 40 zone, and you pulled me over, and you have ruined my life. So, this is it. And I look at these things sometimes, and I think, is this crisis going to be so bad? And I look at the police handling one person, and I imagine in this parking lot that behind them there's another 8 people that are doing this exact same thing with 3 cops each, and just like, yeah. We'll see. Joseph Pomeroy, and then Roadrunner, and then we are out of here. Joseph Pomeroy, good evening, Bill. Good evening, Joseph. Good to see you. Question in bold. That's good for me because I can cut to the chase. How would you use culture to quickly identify a friend from foe when meeting someone for the first time? Interesting. I think my first my knee-jerk reaction to that question would be is I'd ask them what they think about the military. Or the police, one of those two. I'd ask them about what's their opinion about how do they feel about the military. And it's a tough thing because at Cowboys and Indians was really fun. And I did a whole segment in the Apollo 11 series about the cap gun and how you had to make a gun that actually worked. It wasn't a simulation. You had to have a gun, they pull the trigger, and then there's a loud bang and smoke comes out. But cap gun is why we went to the moon. Thank you, Mick. So I would ask him about the military because I think that says a lot. The people who are most anti-military are the ones, in my experience, who have the least historical knowledge and are the most brainwashed by talking points that tell me they're brainwashed. Because they're not making an argument so much as they're repeating an argument or repeating a set of talking points. And so I would ask about that. It's I'll tell you what's weird about that. Hang on a second, Mr. Super Chat from Lapco. Always thought that Clint Walker from the Cheyenne TV show would have made an amazing Superman, great conservative actor. Did you ever get to speak to him? I did not get to speak to Clint Walker. I have spoken to Clint Howard, which is a considerable distance away, but I never did get a chance to talk to him. So let me just look at this again here. Yeah, so the thing that's weird about it is, and the same thing applies to law enforcement with all these traffic stops and body cam stuff. I'm on the side of the law, and I'm on the side of the police almost all the time. 98% of the time, 98%, 99% of the time. If I see an encounter between the police and somebody in a car, I'm generally going to assume that the police are more or less right. However, When I see policemen abusing their authority, it makes me nuts, because it provides ammunition and proof to the people who are saying law enforcement can't be trusted and all the rest of this stuff. When I see cops abusing their authority, I think there should be special penalties for that. I really do, because they have special privileges, like the privilege to shoot and kill somebody, which is necessary. You know, you shoot somebody under color of law because they're either coming at you with a knife or whatever, or they're coming after somebody else with a knife. They have privileges that regular citizens don't have, including the privilege of arresting people, and that is a heavy responsibility. And it's really astonishing the number of policemen that not only don't abuse that power, more and more and more with these body cam footage things. I cannot get over how polite and calm and how much abuse these police take, and just couldn't be nicer, you know, couldn't be nicer. I often think it's too nice. They'll stand and argue with one of these kids for 15 minutes before they arrest him, and I pretty much say in the first 30 seconds, I know how this is going to go. I saw one on the way into work today where this kid was on his phone, and the officer has pulled him over. He said, "I want to see your driver's license," and the guy just said, "You know, wait a second, I'm on the phone." And the guy said, "You need to get off the phone. That this is a traffic stop. I'm giving you a lawful order. Hang up the phone. Your attention needs to be over here." Kept talking. He says, "I'm going to give you one more warning, sir. You either get off that phone or I'm going to get you out of the car." Just like, and then the guy opens the door and pulls this kid out. Doesn't smash his face to the ground, just pulls him out, puts his hand behind his back, throws some cuffs on him. And the cop's like, "What did I do? What did I do? I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything." And I'm thinking to myself, exactly. That's exactly right. You didn't do anything. You should have done something. You should have gotten out of the car. You should have done all of these things, but you didn't. So when and not only do I have a problem with police who are abusing their authority, same for the military, but I see an increase in this. I mean, the FBI has become a collection of strong-arm political hacks. It's a fraternity for authoritarians now. It's not the untouchables, not the unbreakable men of moral standing who are there to enforce the law equally, no matter who the subject is. It's not that anymore. It's something else now. And I also have a real problem with watching military-style police gear working its way down. Many years ago now, it was 6-7 years ago, I was driving through LAX, had to make the loop around again. And I saw LAX police, these would be airport police. They're traffic cops, and they're wearing the cargo pants, tactical belt. They got this, they got the whole thing. They got some of them had vests on, and it's like, oh man, you are just about ready to jump out of that helicopter, aren't you? Just rappel down that cliffside and off you go. I'm not entirely sure this is the term for this, but I've heard it used a lot. That's a kind of mall cop mentality. You're a mall cop, so you have a white shirt and navy blue pants and a badge that says security on it. You need mall cops. Mall cops are important. But when you start running into these guys who are mall cops and then have they've got like the mace and the radio and they're calling in, and it's all just kind of wannabes. And I know actual active duty SEALs, and they are the least authoritarian people I've ever met. They're the fastest to jump in if something needs to get jumped in, and they will enforce the law. But they are the least authoritarian people I've ever met. Genuinely true. I've never seen such, and it makes sense if you think about it, I've never seen such calm people as Navy SEALs. And that's probably because there's not a whole lot to get upset about in a mall if yesterday you were jumping out of a helicopter and kicking indoors in Yemen or something and pulling bad guys out who are shooting at you with AK-47s. I imagine that after that evening, your experience at the mall is not going to get you hyperventilating. That'd be my guess. So, anyway, that's all, that's all part of it. That's why I think that would be my first question to them, Joseph. And he says, if there's enough time, skip. If there isn't enough time, skip the section below. I'll do these fast. Number one, did Han shoot first? Obviously, he shot first, and he was right to shoot first. If he hadn't shot, he'd be dead. Even though he fired first, Han fired in self-defense because somebody had pulled a gun on him and was pointing it at him. And once that happens, man, then your existence is dependent on this person's mood at the moment, and that's not right. So yes, of course he shot first. He was right to shoot first, and this business of changing it is an indication of just how far from reality guys like Spielberg and Lucas have come. Number two, is Trump a funny guy? Trump is hilarious. Trump has Donald Trump is better free-forming than, ad-libbing than anybody I've ever seen in politics. His ability to just improvise is amazing. There was a comedian who does, I forget his name, I'm sure somebody in the comment section remembers him, knows him, kind of a young comedian, and I guess he kind of trends conservative, but anyway, he does a perfect Trump impression. And he said the most amazing thing he ever saw was when Trump came out of the Oval Office at midnight and announced that we just killed like al-Baghdadi or something like that, and he said, "You died like a dog," and he said, and Trump just went on for 40 minutes off the teleprompter, just elaborating on this terrorist that we killed, and that's not easy, and part of a sense of humor is knowing how far to shock people, and Trump runs right up against that line, but I don't think he's ever really gone over. I just find him to be pretty funny. Now, Unlimited Hornetwork says Reagan's "Miss Me" was pretty good on the fly. Reagan was like that. Reagan was Trump without the attitude, because he lived in a time when there wasn't so much ambient attitude as there is today. So Ronald Reagan wouldn't make it today because he's too frickin' nice. But Trump is quick on his feet and fearless, fearless. And somebody else pointed this out, that I saw it on TV not too long ago, but I've been thinking this myself since Trump appeared on the scene. Donald Trump has the thinnest skin in the world, and at the same time, he has the thickest skin in the world. Shane Gillis, that's who it is. That's really true about him. He has the thinnest skin of anybody I've ever seen and the thickest skin of somebody I've ever seen. He takes every attack he takes personally. He responds personally. It's unseemly is what it is. And that's why the people who hate him. And I don't like it, but at the same time, he seems to be able to take so many personal insults personally and keep coming back for more. It's remarkable. Number three, who is Thomas Sowell? Well, first of all, Thomas Sowell is a living indictment of the idea that that Black America's lack of progress is due to somebody else's fault. Thomas Sowell and Clarence Thomas and Ben Carson and all these guys. The thing that they have in common was, I think they were all three mothers in this case. I know it was, I think in Carson's case, they had parents who said, yeah, it may be more difficult for you than it is for other people, but if you want to do it, you can do it, so get to work. And they did. I think he's probably the smartest guy on the planet. And genuine racists cannot make the statement that I'm about to make. They just can't. And when people from the left hear this, they say, I'm just doing it to cover up my racism. Well, why would I do that? If I was really a racist, why would I want to cover it up? I'd be proud of it. I'm proud of being conservative because I'm not a racist. But I would rather live in an America that was 320 million Thomas Sowells and be the only white face in America than live in this America, or live in an America where, everybody looks exactly like, Jon Stewart. He's an extraordinarily brilliant guy. And when I was talking about Island 120, this idea that it seems to be most progressives are smarter than average, but not much. And Candace Owens, Marisha points out, I think they're smarter than average, but not much. The problem is because they're smarter than average, they want to be seen as smarter than average, and they're not that much smarter than average, so that it just comes out naturally. So these insecure leftists do all of this kind of virtue signaling and IQ signaling. They know what all the smart people agree on, and that's their position on anything. And I look at somebody like Thomas Sowell, and I realize Thomas Sowell doesn't give a damn what other people think. He's probably right, because he's a brilliant guy and he's given it serious, balanced thought. And he doesn't have anything to prove to anybody. And that's kind of like the confidence thing we were talking about earlier, or the bragging with the Frank Luke thing. The people who are bragging are people who have doubts about themselves. Luke was a terrible braggart, but he also delivered. He was the best fighter pilot of the war, certainly, and maybe of all time, given what he had to work with. And that's an interesting conflict, because he had all of the elements of being as secure as possible. Good family, good home, loving parents, raised in a solid family, popular in school, popular with the girls, high school football, state champion, junior fullback, captain of the football team. All of these things are just the kind of things that should have made Frank Luke quiet and calm. And that may be a genuine case of just plain biology. He may just have been a highly strung boy, period. And there's no explaining that kind of thing. But yeah, these guys don't care what you think, because they're smarter than you. And the people who have the 106 IQs or the 111 IQs, significantly above average, but they all want to be on Island 120. They all want to be seen as actual geniuses, like one standard deviation. They want to be in the top third percentile. I don't remember who said this. A comedian said, I'm very proud of the fact that I graduated in the top 2/3 of my class. I thought that kind of stuff is hilarious. So, you've got a problem when you've got people whose entire political and emotional outlook on the world is predicated on them trying to feed an insecurity that they've got. So, it's quite pathetic. I've never watched an episode of Big Bang Theory. I just didn't like it from the beginning. But many times when I see Sheldon with that smug, in clips, that kind of smug, I'm much smarter than all of you, I just want to punch him in the face. That certainty. And it's that certainty that leads to the blind spots, and the blind spots lead to trouble. And that's where we are heading. We're heading into a whole bunch of trouble. But I'm confident. Dr. Roadrunner says, Dr. Demento used to say, here's the top 10 of the bottom 20. Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, and Eric is quoting Ronald Reagan, the problem with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant, it's so much that they know just ain't so. Or just isn't so, I suppose. Yeah, so I learned this real early. I learned this before I got the job at PJTV. It was my second, I've told this story a few times, the second to last day or something at my old job editing Sunday Morning Shootout. So I'm on a Hollywood movie set, actual set. I'm in a post-production office surrounded by super liberal people. And I think on my second to last day there, I go into the little, coffee room there, and I'm making something to drink or whatever, and this this 27-year-old producer, associate producer, comes in and just right out of the gate says, "So you're the conservative I've heard so much about." And I said, "Yeah, nice to meet you too." And she said, "I guess that means you're against protecting the environment, right?" And I said, "Well, what environment do you want to protect?" She said, "What?" I said, "What temperature do you want to protect? Do you want to protect the 2003 temperature? Do you want to protect the 1440 temperature? Do you want to protect the temperature of 80,000 years ago or 80 million years ago? Which temperature do you want to protect?" And she just plain went into vapor lock and walked out the door. And I'm not often stumped, but when I am, when I'm really genuinely stumped with either a contradiction or something that looks like, yeah, you know what? I always go back to the same thing. I always go back to what is the, it's poorly worded, but I always go back to what is the freedom answer here? You know, what is the freedom answer? What is the foundational issue that we're talking about here? In the case of abortion, it's like, of course you have a right to your own body. No one should tell you what to do with your own body. That's 100% agree. But this is not your body. It doesn't have your DNA. It's got its own blood supply and perhaps its own blood type. It's not your body. It's in your body, but it's not your body. That's the kind of fundamental level that you have to get to. And if you have a set of morals that are coherent with reality, you can get out of a lot of trouble that way. And occasionally somebody will say something and you go, you know what? You're right. I changed my mind. And that's actually kind of fun. Yeah. People are talking about IQ scores in the YouTube chat stream. I have taken a number of those online IQ tests, and I don't know what the number is. I do actually have a desire to have a professional IQ test administered, which apparently you need to go do with psychologists, and it takes a couple of hours, and it's not just which pattern is next, although there is some of that, I am pretty curious. I better hurry up on that because I have no doubt I'm losing cognitive ability, just leaking out like the vapor that comes out of your tailpipe when your air conditioner's running, It's not like a torrent or anything. Yeah, Bill is 178. Yeah, that's hilarious. I'm trying to think of something funny to say there. Now, the total of those numbers is 16. That's probably closer to the truth. I really would like to know, and I would really also like to talk to. I really would like to sit down and talk to a genuine genius. Like, I mean, a 200 plus IQ person. I would really, really like to sit down and talk to them, because I've been real clear on this in my own head. Much as I wanted to be the 200 IQ person, I'm not. And just saying that alone took me probably 30 years. But I would like to, if they had the time, I'd like to sit down with a really, really genuinely out of the park, brilliant person and say something to the effect of, I'm smart enough to understand that I'm not smart enough to get what I'm asking you for. I'm smart enough to know that I won't be able to understand it. But can you tell me some things that you see that we don't see? Can you give me enough of a vision of that so I can at least get the shadows on the wall? I think that's probably the smartest question that a chimp could ask, I really think the smartest chimp question ever would be, I'm a chimp. I know I'm a chimp, and I know that if you start explaining to me how to fly an instrument approach, I won't understand it. But can you tell me something that gives me a general sense of what it is? And if I was trying to explain an instrument approach to a chimp, I'd build like a ramp and I'd just show a ball going down on this angle, like that. That's basically, yeah. Okay. So it's a controlled descent then. Yes, well done. Well done, Chimpy. And I really would like to see I'd really like to see the outlines of the things that I'm not smart enough to see. Sometimes they'll make movies about, this. I saw one with John Travolta and he was being interviewed by Brett Spiner. I don't know what the movie was, but he's like 300 IQ person, and Spiner's asking him all these questions to try and catch him up, and he's just like, bam, bam, he just knows everything. The guy knows everything. And I'd really, really like to talk to a guy like that because I think I'd be a good I would be a good student chimp. I'd be as good a chimp as I feel like I would learn as much as a chimp is possible of learning because I would recognize my limitations and that I'm not going to get the whole picture, but at least I know the way around it, what it is. What is it fundamentally? Like, for example, phenomenon, is that what it was? Thanks. Like if somebody really, really, really understood quantum theory and this idea that the four forces, see, I'm smart enough to know what the four forces are, and I can even name them for you. But guys who are working on the bleeding edge of quantum are saying that things like gravity and the strong nuclear force and the weak nuclear force, or the electromagnetic force, which are the four forces, in case you didn't know, they said that basically this is an exchange of particles that are going on between these two things. I'd like somebody to say, do you understand how that works? Yeah. Can you dumb it down for me a little bit? Are the particles taking something with them? Or is the pathway that the particles taking part of the issue? Do the particles know where they're going? In other words, if I'm exchanging particles with this thing, how does the particle know to come at me instead of going off that way? These are chimp questions, but they're good chimp questions, and that would be be kind of fun. So we'll see. I really genuinely, people say, if you could sit down with anybody, I would really like to sit down with somebody who is a genuine, actual genius, and who has gone through life the way that you would go through life if you were teaching Down syndrome kids. They're real nice kids, and they've got a great heart, and as long as you make things simple for them, there's a lot of things they can do, but there's so much they can't, and it's got to be what it's like, I would think. And on a closing note here, because I think that's the last one. Let me check, maybe. This is kind of a cool science fiction issue. No, there's one more. Sorry, Roadrunner, New Mexico. NM, I think. Hail and well met, friend William. Hail and well met to you, Roadrunner. Meep, meep. With the current state of entertainment coming out of Hollywood these past few years and the current emphasis on studios on diversity, do award shows like the Oscars, Emmys, or People's Choice actually mean anything anymore? No, they don't. They're fossils. I looked at the latest Golden Globe, and they had this horrific Filipino so-called comedian. I've never seen anybody so unfunny. And I looked at this room full of all these glittering stars that 25, 30 years ago I would have just said, oh my God, look at all these cool people. Now I look at them and it's like I would much rather be in a room with Critical Drinker and a couple of other people like that than with Tom Hanks and and Martin Scorsese and that kind of thing. They're just dinosaurs. That's not where the future is. Anyway, what was the last thing I was talking about? Yeah. Okay, so here's an interesting question that I play with sometimes. If you were to go to war with aliens, the Sacred Order of Knightly Valor says, what do you think Spock's IQ is? I would say probably in the high 280s, 280 plus, but below 300. Spock is a smart guy, but Spock's not constantly just spewing things that no one's ever heard of like Einstein did. So here's an interesting question for you to wrap it up. Let's say we're invaded by aliens, those damn aliens. How do you fight? How would you fight an opponent that was significantly smarter than you? Significantly smarter than you. How would you fight them? That's an actually fascinating question, because if you go into it and you're not, wrapped up in all of this ego, you realize that there's virtually nothing that I can plan that they will not be able to foresee. So how do you fight those people? And I started thinking, maybe the key is randomness, I mean, if something was absolutely random, then it would be unpredictable, even by a very high IQ person. And if you beat them half the time because it's a coin flip, maybe that's the way. I know that Steve Whoop says don't fight. That's the high IQ answer right there. That's the high IQ answer, is to just say, all right, we surrender. Because if chimps ever go to war with humans, like they do in Planet of the Apes, that's going to be over real fast. And not just because we have the weapons. The weapons are a result of what we've got that beat the daylights out of chimps. But it's an interesting question. And I don't think there's a way to win. I really just don't think there's a way to win. Yeah, I think at that point, and I deal with this too sometimes as a thought experiment. When I think about people who are, who are envious of things and they see people who've got money and they think of people who've got money as if they came from another planet and that they, that what they've got is unattainable and needs to be taken away from whatever. Or that was a bad example. Here's a better example. Colonialism, right? So I've got a British background. I'm on the colonizer side of the argument, and I can see the colonizer side of the argument. But if we were to encounter a species that was smarter and more powerful than us, and they weren't just massacring us, they just were our masters, what would I do? And I really think I would try to be like a I don't know what the word is. I think I'd like to work with them as closely as possible and rise as high as I could in the hierarchy, because I think that would be more interesting. Number one, I wouldn't sell other humans out to do it, but I would want to put on the best possible face for humanity. You know what I mean? If I heard, for example, when you look at the poverty around the world in Africa or Asia, parts of Asia, South America, and you see these people living in open sewers and stuff in Brazil slums and so on. Some of these people have cell phones, and certainly all of them know that there's a world out there that is so far beyond where they are that people who come and visit from this Western world have pocket change that is a year's salary for you, that kind of thing. What would I do if I ran into people like that? If I ran into aliens whose society is so advanced that they could throw, a couple $1 million of actual value to me because I carried their bags from the carousel to the back of the car. I would want to get to that place. I really would. I would want to get to that place, and I would do everything I could to get to that place. I don't think I could stand living. I don't think I could stand living anywhere where I knew there was someplace better, and not move. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If I thought there was someplace better than this, I think I'd move there. And that's basically what the colonies is about. And while there are a lot of things about many different countries that I do think are better than America, on balance, there's no place I'd rather live. It'd be nice if we had the sense of good behavior that I saw in Norway, or the industriousness of the Japanese, or their design sense, or the Italians' design sense. But that doesn't mean I want to live in Italy. So there you go. Last one for the night, Lapco92 with a super chat there. Did you see the news story about the Navajo being butthurt about the moon mission carrying human remains? The hubris of claiming the moon. Yes, and we talk about it in. We had to do that show twice because Scott's recording didn't work. The first time we talked about it at length. And for those of you not up on it, we had a privately funded lander that failed after launch. Launch was perfect. The Peregrine lunar lander was a privately funded lunar lander, and among its payload apparently were cremated ashes of Nichelle Nichols and a number of other people. And one of the leaders of Navajo Nation basically said that they consider the moon to be sacred, and that this is desecration of their sacred moon. And me in my smartass mode wanted to say, well, Chief, I tell you what, I guarantee you that if you are outside sitting around a campfire, you will not be aware that this is happening. I guarantee it. You will not know, and nobody else will either. And this gets to the thing, like, if there are people who don't even know what a planet is, or they don't even know what a planet is. And if you discovered an asteroid that was made out of pure platinum, and Psyche looks like it's worth $4 quadrillion worth of raw materials, if you went up there and started getting that stuff, they would demand a piece of something. In fact, they demand an equal piece of something that you did the work to go get, that they didn't even know existed. And it didn't become an issue until they became aware that you were getting rich off of something that they either didn't have the intelligence or the work ethic or both to go and do. And that kind of thing that's the end of the road. That's what socialism does to people, I want you to kill my neighbor's cow. My neighbor got a cow, and they're doing so much better. And if it had been an American, it would have said, could I have a cow, or could I maybe get 3 cows? But no, the Russians say what they want God to do is to kill the cow, because they don't want to work as hard as that person, but they cannot bear the idea that that person's doing better than they are. Cannot tolerate it. So therefore, kill the cow, we can all be poor together. That's what they want. That's what they want. There was a woman who came to one of my speaking events. It's like she had to rumple her clothes before she went out. Nobody's clothes look that rumpled. It's almost like you have to, like she put them in a trash compactor, and she was a big old leftist, and I just asked her, I said, this is a serious question, ma'am, I'm not joking about this. Are you saying that you would rather live in a world where everybody, not just the rich, but everybody was doing worse, so long as they were all doing worse equally? And she said, yes, absolutely. I said, that's really sick. That's what they want, and that's what they'll get if they, but they won't get it because they don't have a philosophical or moral or political code that is sustainable, if you'll pardon that word, which I'm not particularly happy of. All right, so I'm time for me to go home. 8:20. Yeah, you get your minimum viable product there. This show, as you probably know, is made possible by the members of BillWhittle.com, who continue to put up with so much delays and all the rest of it. The never-ending story continues. I think I'm probably written out for the day. I might just go home and get to bed early, get in around 6 or something. Right angles tomorrow morning at 10:30. I know that I'm not going backwards, and I know that even though I am spending 7 pages where I thought I might spend a paragraph, I am nevertheless moving in that direction. I'm knocking scenes down, so there's that. Okay, so anyway, thanks again for joining us here on Stratosphere Studios, and I'm very sorry, by the way, for those of you who are there. I push Stratosphere Lounge from Thursday to Friday because we went out to see the launch, and then by the time Friday came around, I'd been up for 30 hours and I had to cancel it again. So I'm sorry if I was disappointing you both there. And there's a lot of in the YouTube stream. There's a lot of Thunderchild, which is when I went to school in Bermuda. We had an entire hour dedicated to reading, and they read War of the Worlds. We sat there and we went around the room, and we all read for the day. Read War of the Worlds, and War of the Worlds is about humanity getting its ass handed to it, and then all of a sudden, there's this one destroyer, or it wasn't a big ship. I don't know, it was a battleship or anything. It was like a destroyer. Something, and they go charging after this tripod, and they hit it with a cannon, and they knock it down, they kill it, and then there's another one coming, and then it gets a second one, and everybody says two, and then Thunderchild gets melted by the heat ray. But yeah, that's a name that you don't forget soon. All right, gang. So let's say goodnight to our friends here on YouTube. So good night, friends on YouTube, and we'll see you hopefully Thursday. Don't see any reason why not. So until then, do whatever you need to